Hi everyone, it's Koby Stevens here. I just want to jump in quickly and say a massive thank you for joining us. For almost a decade, I was fortunate enough to play Australian rules football. Before in 2018, I had to retire after a string of concussions.
And Koby Stevens has revealed his regret at keeping concussion symptoms a secret.
The Remade is a series born from that journey. Over the last 5 years, I've travelled the world searching for healing and meeting some of the most inspiring, resilient, and courageous people I've ever known. People who've not only challenged the way that I see the world, but people whose stories deserve to be told. And just quickly before we get into this episode, I need to say a massive thank you to our major sponsor, Licci, a visionary non-profit building the first ever community designed for adults living with TBI. Their mission? To offer more than a place to live, but a place to grow and belong. If this message resonates with you, visit villalicci.org to support the movement. Is that your biggest fear, that the audience will see through it?
No, the biggest fear is that I'll feel it on the day.
Right, yeah.
It's way scarier.
That's way scary.
Way scarier.
Why's that?
The thought of being in your trailer and waiting for someone to knock on your door that you're about to go and do something that you don't want to do scares. That's the scariest thing for me.
Yeah.
I still feel some of the characters I played 20 years ago.
Wow.
Because it's like I've gotten into their heads so much, and I've had to think really how a psychopath would approach something, how a narcissist would approach something.
Yesterday, for an hour, as soon as you arrived in Australia, it was all over the radio.
Yeah. That's all they were talking about. The AFL and the injuries, and even to the point of talking about parents not letting their kids play the sport anymore.
Yeah,
which is devastating.
I remember when I had that last concussion, not one person could tell me what that next 6 weeks or 8 weeks is like.
I love my AFL, I love football, I love going to watch the Saints. I think the game is trying to respond, but it's responding mainly to what's happening on the field still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how much is being done for the concussed player.
Well, thanks for being here, brother.
Pleasure, mate.
You're looking nice and tanned after your Fiji trip.
Yeah, it was nice.
I'm jealous. I was thinking about it last night. I was like, I remember the first time we met properly was at the cafe, nearly 5 years ago now.
It'd be more, I reckon. I reckon it would be, because it was well before COVID. And I was with Roo having a cup of coffee, the old captain. And you were either you were there just leaving, or you were outside. And I remember saying to Nick, I said, I really want to chat to Koby. Can I, go say g'day? And I'm really glad we did.
Yeah, man.
I'm really glad we got to meet.
It's funny because I had these ideas of the person I thought I knew on the screen, because I hadn't really had the chance to meet you at the football club yet. But what I've learned over the last 5 years about who you actually are, it's mate, I'm so grateful that we've had that opportunity.
Oh mate, it's been awesome, because I remember saying to you, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. And I'm so thrilled that you actually took that seriously and actually reached out, because sometimes you say that to people and they're either too shy to initiate that contact or whatever. But I'm thrilled that you did reach out and go, I've got this idea, and what do you think? So it was really exciting for me, because I admired you so much as a player. I mean, even as an opposition player when you were at the Dogs, and then when you came to St Kilda, I was so pumped.
Yeah.
I was so excited, like this is exactly who we need in our midfield, and I just loved watching you play for our guys, and I was, shattered that you had to retire early. And I always feel as an active, someone that goes to the game every week and watches the game, I always feel a sense of responsibility for all our players, past and present, because it's like, well, you're part of the crowd at the Coliseum, and it's like, well, you're also kind of partially responsible for what happens to those players through the course of their career. So it's something I think that all true supporters feel. You know.
Do they though? One thing I've learned about you is that I've always admired how much you really respect and love the players that you go and support. And I don't know if they have as much love as what you do. Where did that come from? Like why? Like I think it's so different, and I've always looked up to you in that regard. And hearing you speak about the players and the St Kilda players in general, where does that come from?
I guess it comes from, pure love for the game, right? And just, passion for the club. But I think beyond that, I think as an actor, when you're preparing for roles, and sometimes that takes on a physical component. It's like how much work goes into being able to do something competently, and it's a really short career, even in the best case scenario for an AFL player. So I've always really respected that there's this window where your body is going to be at its prime, and it's not going to be that long. If you can go to 33, you're doing really, really well. And so whenever I see a young draftee come into the playing group and you meet this, puppy-faced 18-year-old, it kind of breaks my heart. It's like, oh, they're full of so much promise. What career is in store for them? What's this game going to deliver them? So I'm conscious of the fact that it's a finite period. Really respectful of the level of dedication and sacrifice it takes to get to the fitness level to be able to play a first game of AFL. That is no small thing. And I really respect that and care for all the players because they're delivering what I think is the greatest contact sport spectacle in the world. But it's the understanding of what physically it takes, and mentally as well.
See, for me, that was everything I knew, and for me, that was easy. When I look at you, it scares the living shit out of me to think of acting and sitting in front of a camera. And I remember I was showing Bill this morning. Bill hasn't seen the chopper yet, and I was thinking about it. I was like, man, for you to be able to morph into that character, that's what I respect. I look at football and go, well, I've done that, and that for me was normal. But when I watched that, the first time I watched it, but watching that, I can relate to how hard that must be for you. Can you, what does it take to actually get to that?
It's interesting because it's one thing to be able to do it, but I don't think being able to do it is enough, because the most important thing, almost to me more important than being able to do it well, is believing that you can do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't absolutely believe and commit to it, I feel like you're going to see through that. And it takes such arrogance to think that you can become somebody else, right? And I don't think about it that way. To me, it feels natural. I look at someone and I feel like I could embody that person. I feel like I could get into most of it's mental. I feel like I can get into the mind of that person, and then I work from there out, and so I always want to feel as though I should be able to answer questions for that character. I also always want to feel like I can speak for them, and then from there everything else becomes easier. But it's a real thrill, and I love doing it. But I do think a lot of it comes from I have to believe, and everything I've said no to is because I have just not felt it in here. Forget about what the project is, how big, how small, where it is, who's in it. None of that means anything to me. Can I become this person? Do I want to become this person? Is there a challenge in that?
Is that your biggest fear, that the audience will see through it?
No, the biggest fear is that I'll feel it on the day.
Right. Yeah.
It's way scarier.
It's way scarier.
Way scarier.
What's that?
The thought of being in your trailer and waiting for someone to knock on your door that you're about to go and do something that you don't want to do scares. That's the scariest thing for me.
Yeah.
That I couldn't do, so I don't.
Yeah.
That's a real fear. So if I say no to something, it's because I don't want to hear that knock.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
I don't want to feel that level of loneliness.
Yeah.
It's lonely enough as it is.
I can imagine.
And you know, you're constantly trying to get out of your own head. So yeah, that's a big reason why.
And what, like, if you do say yes to a role, I remember talking to you, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, you were in Germany, and you're like, mate, I can't really talk over the phone because I'm embodying another voice. Like, that level of preparation, I think, to like a pre-season or something, what does it take to actually get into the mind of this character that's on paper? Like, that must be an extreme, like, undertaking for you emotionally, like. Yeah,
well, I guess I have to convince myself, right? So usually when I'm filming, it's funny, we're in a church, like I've always said I lead quite a monastic life when I'm filming, and I really enjoy that. It's super simple, and I unplug from everything, and I don't try and replicate my normal life.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's not much of a commitment, whether it's 3 months or 6 months. It's not a ton of time, so just plug in. I don't like talking to people when I'm filming, aside from my immediate family. I'm happy to, you know, text and email, but usually I'm having to embody an accent or a nationality that's different to mine, and so I just enjoy just going on that journey. So it's just it is a commitment, but it's also a real honour.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm very respectful of that. And then also, the upside is actually makes me appreciate my normal life so much more.
Yeah.
When I come home and first thing I do is get on a motorbike, because I don't do that when I'm filming. You know, so it's just kind of like, it adds sweetener to all the things, going to the football, hanging out, going for a walk, walking the dog, going for a bike ride. Like, it just adds an extra bit of sweetener when you kind of take that away.
Does it ever leave like a residue on your character, like having to morph into someone else like that? Like, can you just come out of it straight away, or is it just something that, you know, like an injury from a footballer, like, is that something that ever happens? Or? Yeah,
it definitely has an effect. Yeah, sometimes it takes me a while to kind of snap out of the mode, or because I'm giving half my brain to that person.
Yeah.
Right? So I have a deal with my wife where it's like, just give me 3 days when I land, not to like be selfishly just indulging, but like, if I ask a stupid question, please don't be too judgmental, because like my brain's just I'm not up to speed. I should know the schedule, and I know the schedule, but I'm going to forget lots of things because I've got plates spinning over here that I can't just stop.
Yeah.
So they do hang around, and some of them, I still feel some of the characters I played 20 years ago.
Wow.
Because it's like I've gotten into their heads so much, and I've had to think really badly about the world from different viewpoints, and how a psychopath would approach something, how a narcissist would approach something, you know, you're trying to take on those thought patterns. So I try not to just, you know, shove them off straight away.
Yeah, it's crazy for me to think about, because I guess you're like building up this part of your brain to be someone else. And, you know, I think about the journey that we've been on for the last 5 years. Has that ever made you think about the brain in a different way since we've been working together on this film?
It really has. And I remember you telling me how when you were in your darkest place, you removed yourself from Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting example of like, so what you were responding to there, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming you recognised that an environmental change was going to be very, very beneficial, or on a subconscious level even, you know. And so learning about all the things that can contribute, you know, I guess psychologists and psychiatrists talk about that toolbox, mental health toolbox. And did you know then that was something out of your toolbox, or were you just responding? Was that a...
No, I've really dove into that concept of having a toolbox now. Like, I call it a tool belt now in 2025. But back then, for me, it was I look back at it, it was pure escape.
Right.
It was pure escape from, I guess, your whole identity, for me, was wrapped up in being this footballer, right? Tough footballer. And one day you're not that. And I really struggled with the fact that I had an injury that you couldn't see. And I knew it was doing things inside of me that I wasn't showing to the world. And I felt like there was two parts of me. There's this one part that the world was seeing, which was masking a lot of this pain that was going on inside of him, and there was this other person that was really struggling. And for me, it was just this pure that I didn't want to be in this city. I wanted to go to Indonesia and surf once I started to get back on my feet and deal with that myself, because I felt like I could be that other person inside when I was by myself on an island surfing, you know?
So was it a quest to be a more authentic self, or was it an exhaustion? Did you feel exhausting?
It felt very exhausting, yeah. Especially when I retired, there was a lot of media attention, and so I'd be walking down Melbourne and someone would be like, "Oh, how you going, mate? Like, and I hope you're doing good." And out of the goodness of their heart, they're doing well, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it was like this massive trigger to go, "Wow, fuck, mate! Like, you're not the person you were 6 months ago. You're not an AFL player. You lost this job that you worked so hard for over a 15-year period, and there's nothing you can do about that." And I was really struggling with this disconnection from being that person that I once was to who I am now. And it's funny, I had a conversation with a young kid the other day, and he was struggling to work out after he'd had a few brain injuries. And he was saying, "Look, man, I'm going to the gym and I'm lifting big weights and trying, but 5 minutes in, my brain blows up. I get headaches. I get my eyes start to hurt. I get dizzy." And I was like, dude, I was exactly the same. But I was trying to be Koby the footballer whilst I was dealing with this injury and going to a gym and training and realizing that's not who I am anymore. And I just said it simply, I was just like, "Look, man, you need to come to terms with you are not that person who you were a couple of weeks ago. You might get back there, and hopefully you do." But that was the big shift for me in going, all right, like, I need to be really honest with myself and go, I'm not that at the moment.
Right.
But I want to get back there. And I had to just strip that part of me back. And when I started to face that, and going to Indonesia and surfing was a big part of it. It was a big part of me just being in a really dark place in that period and going to surf waves that were just crazy by myself and putting myself in dangerous situations because I honestly didn't care.
Right.
Yeah, I hurt myself pretty bad one day. It hit the reef really bad, and I was alone, and hobbled back to my room, reef cuts all down my back, and that was like it was this one day, man. That happened, and then about 2 hours later, this French surfer, his surfboard washed up on the beach and he drowned. And it was kind of like I was sitting there in Indonesia by myself going, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you need to... And it was like I went home, and every time I come back to Melbourne, you know, I'd go over there and just felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders, and I'd come home and it was just like, whoa. And after that experience, I remember it pretty vividly. I was like, dude, you need to face this and do something about it. And I guess that's when I started to strip it all back, yeah. The Remade series is brought to you by our partner, Licci, a non-for-profit building the first ever community for people living with traumatic brain injuries to live on their own with dignity and support. If you believe in second chances and a safe space for TBI sufferers, visit villalicci.org to make a donation and learn more. So you've done comedy, stand up, and then you went on to TV, and then was it sketch?
Yes, TV sketch comedy. And
then to acting after that. First film was The Castle, and then Chopper, which to me is mind-blowing because I remember watching that as a kid and just be like, wow, it's one of the most incredible performances, and still probably to this day do people pull you up on that?
Yeah, they do a bit. It's had legs, and it's interesting because like it wasn't, despite what people think, it wasn't a huge film when it came out. You know, like it was pretty big here, but no one knew about it overseas at all until 12, 24 months later. And even then it was just like a real slow trickle that only people in the industry knew about the film, but the general public didn't really. Though over the last 20-something years, like it's changed. Like a lot of people have found it and are more aware of it. So it's funny how it goes to prove it's that thing of like, you're way better off doing the quality thing for the long game.
For the long game,
It pays off, you know. It's kind of irrelevant what tiny sum of money I would have been paid to do that film.
Yeah, right.
When you compare what it's potentially done for my career, you know, like.
And that must build an incredible amount of resilience, because it hasn't always been smooth sailing, like that transition through that early parts of the career, hey?
Absolutely. I mean, even with that film, like with Chopper, I auditioned for the role and presumably got the part. And then that film disappeared. Like it was on the precipice of being made, kind of like the journey you're going on with this. You think it's going to be done, and then Chopper, the real guy, went on television drunk and made some claims about some crimes.
Wow.
And we lost our funding the next day, and the film was basically over. And I'd prepared to play him. Like I'd spent 1.5 years researching and all this sort of stuff, and then suddenly it was not happening. But I knew we were still trying to piece the film together, so I had to keep that belief that it was gonna. I just had to ignore all the noise, and then just kept preparing, and then we somehow 1 year later managed to resurrect it, and then we were in production. That's just an example of like that the road is never really linear or smooth when it comes to film. I had a TV show years before that just got axed after like its 3rd week, and it was so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, so embarrassing. It was a show I didn't want to do, and I sort of got shoehorned into it. And then it was such a public thing. I remember that feeling like you're talking about, walking down the street, people going, "Oh, sorry about your TV show, mate."
Yeah.
And, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'd already started working on the next thing, but for the next 2 years, that was what people would talk to me about. And it used to drive me mad, because you just didn't want to be a victim.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it took quite some time for that next project that I was working on to come out, for people to stop talking about like the failure.
Yeah. Just waiting for the next bunch of news to be pushed out.
Yeah.
What is that like for you? What does that do to you, and how do you work through those things? I'm really interested.
I was super flat. I remember, you know, and it was like really early on in my wife and my relationship. I'm trying to think, at the time we had just gotten married, and we were just getting started, you know. And then that identity, like you're talking about. Well, do you work in television or not? No, now you don't work in television anymore. And so I went back to doing stand-up, and I went back on tour while I was working on the next project. And just that thing of, like you talk about, that sense of identity. And are you going to stay true to your pathway, or are you just going to get scared now and pull your head in and not stick your neck out again?
Yeah.
What does it mean anyway if something doesn't work? What does it actually mean?
Yeah.
Does it mean it was bad? Does it mean it was bad timing? You know. So one thing I really try and enforce with my kids now, you know, especially in this generation, of trying not to pay too much attention to right here, right now, what people are going to say.
Yeah. That must have been incredibly hard early though, because, you know, like I was thinking about footballers whinge about how much attention they get in Melbourne, but I can't fathom how much attention you would have got, and especially after, I think we were talking about Dirty John, like you said, after that TV series, like being in Melbourne was pretty tough. So like early days, that must have been hard, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, being recognised, I mean, sometimes it's good. Like, I remember, like when Dirty John came out, like you're playing this narcissistic psychopath, you know, to the extent that like someone wants to cross the road when they see you coming. Well, that's a good sign. But it is that thing of like trying to get used to the idea that, you know, someone recognises you, because you feel like you're just another person.
Yeah.
You know, and you convince yourself you're just another person, but then someone recognises you, and it kind of destroys that illusion almost for yourself. But for the most part, it's pretty easy. I think it's just a mindset more than anything else.
We've sat down today and we're having a meeting about Thrive and how the journey of the group, like it's been nearly 5 years, and the frustration of having this beautiful creative vision and something that we believe is going to help a lot of people, but not being able to get it out to the world. And you talk about staying true to yourself and staying true to what you want to do.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Like, Eric Bana, not the actor, Eric Bana the person, and like staying true to what you want out of life and what you want to do in your creative, pursuits?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think, I remember someone using the expression, a dog in traffic. Sometimes people behave like a dog in traffic.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a good visual, and sometimes it's hard not to be a dog in traffic. And I had a mate that was going through a pretty ugly divorce. I remember saying to him, there's an old acting bit of advice, which is, if in doubt, do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, we feel an urge to respond to everything, and I think sometimes it's going back to your experience of Indonesia. Like, I think sometimes you have to find your own Indonesian wave in your head.
Yeah.
I feel lucky because the things that really bring me joy are very simple things. I feel the same way about jumping on a bike as I did when I was 10 years old. I love getting on two wheels, whether it be a bicycle or a motorcycle. I love my AFL. I love football. I love going to watch the Saints. So those things really do fill my bucket.
Yeah.
And they're accessible. I don't need massive grandeur in my private life to make me really, really happy. I like doing stuff in the garden. I like being at home. I like listening to birds. It's just, so I feel lucky for that. I've never done drugs. I never chased a high that was, out of my reach.
Yeah.
And just kept things really, really simple. Doesn't mean that you don't have aspirations. Doesn't mean that you don't take work really, really seriously. But away from that, I try and keep things really, really simple.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And we'll talk about the stuff you do want to talk about. You went to the footy game last night, but it was a massive round for the AFL with the Spud match. And some people wouldn't know who Danny Frawley is, but I was lucky to spend, I think, a year and a half with him at St Kilda Football Club, and that, I remember, if you knew Spud, this grand character who you had no idea like what might have been going on under the surface, such a beautiful person, and when he's passing, it really rocked me, and especially the findings afterwards about CTE. But last night they had the awareness match for mental health. Can you talk to a little bit about your bond with Spud and everything you went through there?
Yeah, well, first, I loved Spud, or Danny Frawley, as the captain of my football team.
Yeah.
And he was just the most courageous, strong, powerful defender who played in an era where the game was super, super tough. And he was just a leader amongst men. And then in his post-football career life, he was this fantastic commentator and media personality who was the most gregarious, funny, life of the party, huge personality, just make you laugh. Just so funny.
He'd bring down the house of 40 players in a team meeting every time he opened his mouth.
And now we have this fantastic legacy, unfortunately, after his passing, called Spud's Match, where once a year the AFL puts this round aside to create awareness around mental health, particularly the St Kilda game. And last night we played a home game at the MCG in front of 65,000 people against the Blues, which we unfortunately lost. But yeah, that was a really, really special night, and a legacy of his wonderful family, and Chelsea, who's the voice of the Danny Frawley Centre down at our home ground at RSEA Park, and they've now combined with the Black Dog Institute to create infrastructure there for people with mental health issues and problems. So I'm really proud of what the club's doing in that space. It's walking the walk, and it's trying to work out how to improve it every year, which is fantastic. It's not just like they started something and they're resting on their laurels. And Danny would be just beside. He would have had his chest pumped.
You reckon? Yeah.
Night. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you, as obviously a good friend of Danny's, think about taking on that legacy? And when you see, I think I sit back and I see, another AFL player took his life probably 2 months ago, and it makes me incredibly sad. And I just look around and I feel like there's so much so much of that going on in the world right now, and so much people don't understand who they really are and are struggling, and I think it's really hard to watch. Do you think about that in terms of dragging on that legacy from Danny and like helping people in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Danny was a mate. You know, we used to cycle together and text each other all the time during games, and he'd just always make me laugh. And I think about, you know, the last time I saw him, you know, he seemed to me to be in such a great place, and it always confused me, you know, and always made me wonder about people who really struggle. You know, how much masking is involved, or are you literally having a great time and then you have a really dark time very soon after. And I just know that from the last 5 or 6 years of his legacy, you know, the message has always just been, you know, to reach out and to connect, and we know many examples that literally can save lives. Yeah. Maybe the time that you reach out and connect is when someone's coming down, or they're at their worst, or they're on their way to their worst, and that connection can really help. And I'm sure you've felt that in your journey. So I think that's a really great practical bit of messaging that comes out of the round.
Did that have anything to do with the decision to be? Well, I remember when I took Thrive to you and the film, there was no hesitation in like, mate, reach out. And pretty quickly when I, you know, told you my creative vision for the film and everything we wanted to do with it, did that have any impact on that?
Most definitely. I mean, you know, Danny's passing was really shocking, but I already felt very passionate about this space and about people needing to be more aware, and just that it was far more wide-reaching than people probably realised. And so I was thrilled when you reached out, because I thought your story was such a potentially great one, and also just really excited about someone making their first big creative choice, and you know, getting their first vision out there. So I know it took us a long time, but I never doubted that the end product would be fantastic.
Yeah. What have you seen in this journey with me in terms of now looking at the landscape of the AFL maybe a little bit differently after the people that we've met on this journey who have had brain injuries, concussions, but personally that journey with me and the crew that we've been making the film with?
Well, it's another resilience piece.
Yeah.
You know? I'll look back, and I think one of the smartest things you did was assemble a team, and I feel like we've all really lent on each other through that process.
Yeah.
And I've always felt a real positive energy from that, in terms of like everyone willing each other on and kind of like willing the project over the line, and, you know, hoping for the best always. Like, it's never felt like you were down and out on the canvas.
Yeah.
You know, like I always felt like you kept a real positive energy through that process, and that idea that as a team you can always achieve more.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
You assemble a great bunch of people to help you with that journey, and it's just proof how important that is.
Yeah, I think I learned that earlier, whether it's with business or what we're doing now, you know, creative purpose on the film, but a lot of people try to do it all themselves.
Right.
And they want everything now. And I remember when we first started doing this film, I was like, fuck dude, I want this out in the next 2 years, you know, and there's so much anxiety of just wanting to get it out. But a lot of people don't surround themselves with good people, and they don't lean on that. Is that something that you've found in this industry? Because I know it can be very tough, but being able to relinquish the ideas that you have to bring in amazing people to help you on that journey.
100%. So I've been so fortunate to work with some of the great filmmakers. Yeah. And they're all completely different in the way they approach the craft,
yeah,
and the way they execute a filming day. But the one thing that the greatest ones have in common is that they're the most open to other people's ideas.
Yeah.
Which I was always blown away by. I always thought, well, if I'm working with this person, they're going to be, you know, it's going to be a kind of dictatorial kind of environment. And it is in the sense that they're the leader and they're the driving force, but they're also the ones who are most open to changing a scene based on what the actors just did, or being open to an idea from their co-producer or the writer or whatever, and it always really blew me away. Whereas the people who were less secure seemed to be the ones that are least open to any idea aside their own, which always would fascinate me and in a way sort of drive me crazy.
Yeah. It's like you've spent a lot of time in the States and in Hollywood now with some pretty big budget films. What has that taught you, being in Hollywood and being able to come home and separate yourself as Eric Bana the actor and Eric Bana the person? What does that do for your mental health and mind space?
I can see how it potentially can have a negative effect. I think the most important thing for me has been the match between working and not working. And I remember early in my career seeing a lot of my peers going from one film to the next without breaks in between. And I couldn't understand it. I realised after talking to them that they really struggled not working. Yeah. Because they didn't have outside interests or they didn't have hobbies. And so it was far easier for them to just stay in the white noise, and just go from film to film to film. It did two things. It exasperated whatever problem they had, made them more reliant on the work mentally, meant they were making some pretty average choices sometimes as well because they were just choosing to work for the sake of work. And I never ever understood that. So I think by just living here and having a physical separation from the work, wherever it is in the world, has been really, really beneficial. And also just kind of understanding that none of that noise really means anything. Whenever you think something's going to make all the difference in terms of your career, it doesn't really. So be careful with what you wish for in some ways, and just try and choose the best work, because that's what you'll live with, and that's what will nourish you creatively. Is the most important thing.
What have you told yourself that when you were first starting out?
I think I was doing it without knowing it in some ways. Even early on, I had a great agent who I worked with at the early stage of the career, and our pure focus was just to work with the best filmmakers we could. Yeah. And because we realised that's where the best scripts went, it's hopefully where the best work would be done, and it didn't matter how big the role was. It was more important to work with great people than it was to go after the big role. So early on, that's what I really, really focused on. And then, obviously as time goes on, you sort of shift your focus and better opportunities or more opportunities come up. But I think I was kind of responding to that idea, even on a subconscious level, that it's way more fun to be in the good film and just be a part of it. Black Hawk Down's a great example.
Incredible.
My character on paper was way smaller than he is in the film. Yeah. I was just one of 32 guys in a script, but I wanted to be in that film because I knew that story, and Ridley Scott was one of my favourite directors, and it was an incredible true story. So I just threw myself into that, and then my character's role kind of got bigger through the course of the shooting of the film, and to this day it was one of the best experiences of my life. Yeah. But again, it's just because I was responding to the material, and at the time I had an offer of a really big role in another film that was pretty average. Yeah. And if you were just chasing the thing, you would have said yes to that other role because it was on paper a much bigger role with a good movie star opposite. The film didn't do very well, but it was an opportunity. So yeah, it's an example of just, what is it you want? Yeah. What is it you really want? What does it mean if you get the bigger role and that film doesn't do well? So just sometimes it really messes with your head. I think having a bit of separation really helps, and just reminding yourself, well, what am I here for? Am I here for the long game or the short game? Yeah.
That must be pretty hard, because I can imagine you get an enormous amount of offers come your way, being able to separate your vision and this trajectory and path that you're on from all that noise, or is that something that's easy? Or
I found it relatively easy, and I think just because I so hate the idea of doing something that I don't love. Yeah. That it just really puts me off making that choice. And sometimes you'll say no to material that's very, very good. it's not that you're saying no to something because you don't think it'll work. It's just because it just doesn't. You don't think you can become that person, or you don't think the project's right, or it just doesn't speak to you. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it right or wrong for you.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier about your toolbox. And what is Eric Bana's toolbox? Is it as simple as going out and getting in the car or getting on a motorbike and being in the fresh air that makes you feel better? Because one thing, me and my friends always talk about it, something that makes me feel good might be completely different to someone else. And that, for my mental health, might be something that is completely different. For me, it's like, I just need to be in the sun and go for a surf. And, I love getting in ice baths and saunas, and people will be like, fuck, I hate that. But it's like, finding something that just makes you feel good, makes you feel that 10% better. And I always say to my mates, like, find those things and keep filling the cup over the week and see how you feel by the end of it, What's that toolbox for you look like?
Fortunately, it's pretty simple stuff. Like, I love the morning. I love having a slow start to the morning. I love sitting down, having breakfast, my cup of coffee that I've made, my dog sitting there, then going for a walk, like easing into the day, just simple things. I love my golf. I love playing tennis once a week with a few mates. We have a great laugh on Monday nights. We play doubles and just belt the crap out of each other and just laugh. I love staying healthy. I love, I don't take my health for granted, so, and just being on the bike would be the number one thing.
What's that do for you?
I find it very, to me, it's like meditation.
Yeah.
It's the only place I feel really coordinated.
Really?
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I feel completely coordinated when I'm on a bike or if I'm driving a car, and then I just feel slightly coordinated when I do all the other things that I do. So I've put a lot of time into it, as well, and so I love the headspace and the connections it brings me as well. Some of my closest friends are guys that I will occasionally go away for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days with and just have the greatest times and share all these amazing. My best riding buddy is someone who will stop on the side of the road as much as I do at exactly the same time as I do.
Really?
To take in something. It's a really special thing. It's like
it's a special
nothing gets
connection.
said. So we'll just both pull up and we'll go.
Don't even say a word, just.
And then off we'll go again. It's a really, it's a really special thing.
Where's the favourite place you've ridden?
I love the high country between Victoria and New South Wales. I just, that's kind of like, that's the place where I can feel my batteries getting recharged. Like,
you smell the fresh air, mate.
It's fresh air and it's dense and it's
funny. I went home the other week back down to Bensdale, and first thing my uncle said to me, he's like, "You smell that?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, that's that fresh air, mate. You don't get that in the city." I had a good laugh, but it is special down there. One last thing I want to talk about is that what's the legacy you'll leave, not with your work reputation, but something like you over this journey you would pass down to your kids, like you were talking to earlier about, like in terms of sticking to your path, having a vision and being able to block out that noise and do what makes you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's that. I've sometimes wondered, like, what do the kids think, or what will they think, and at what age will some of your subconscious messaging be its strongest? You just never know, So for me, I hope they see someone who really enjoys life, enjoys the simple things in life, and not take things for granted. To me, is almost the most important thing. It's like with that old saying of, like, happiness is where you're at, minus the envy you have for what somebody else has or something.
Yeah.
I've probably stuffed that up, but you know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
Always being envious of someone else and always being like looking to that for the wrong reasons is I think can be very awkward for kids. And I think about how much this generation is aware of what everyone else is doing and where they are and where they're going on holidays and what car they're driving and what they're buying. I mean, it's just insane.
Does that scare you as a dad?
It does. I mean, I think my kids, they're 23 and 26 now, so they're just kind of like on the edge of that wave. But if I had a 12-year-old right now, it would really scare me, you know, just because of how much of that stuff is in their face. And I think young people today have really unique challenges that I didn't have and that you didn't have.
Yeah.
Very specific, and we know that from a mental health perspective, you know, there are all these other diseases that are on the decline aside from mental health, now how much of that is just general awareness and diagnosis, and how much of it is relevant to the environment that they're in and how challenging it is for them, you know, is really interesting. And, you know, part of the journey that you've gone on with this topic, I know, is all just about trying to help people with their tools and trying to help people recover and give them a sense of hope.
It's incredible how much just a little bit of hope goes and how far it goes, right? Like, I've met so many people, man, it's just as much as a conversation you might think, isn't that impactful? For them, it's just a completely different ballgame.
In what way?
In terms of, you never know how much something small like that could impact someone who's going through something that, like what I went through, and how lonely that journey is.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in rehab group, like, you know, which is when you're injured, you're in rehab group. And I was thinking about this the other day and broke a lot of bones and whatever else. But you always knew that you were going to rock up on the day to training. You knew, all right, I've got a torn hamstring. I know what I have to do today. We've got a staff of physio around me, and these are the exact steps I'm going to take to get back. Here's the next 6 weeks, I'll be back playing footy by then. I remember when I had that last concussion, not one person could tell me what that next 6 weeks or 8 weeks looked like. Not one person could understand what was going on inside my head. And that is one of the most lonely journeys I think someone could go on. And when I meet people, that's exactly the same journey they go on, right? And just, you'll never know how far that smallest little conversation could go. And that's something I've really learned and been able to grasp over the last 5 years. I think it's a really important point. It's
really powerful, because I guess it would feel like you're just bobbing around in the middle of the ocean looking for the edge of the pool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets like, you know, I think as we've seen it, it can go one way, which is tragedy.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like this perfect storm. It's, you know, you're hit with a head injury, you're in a lonely, dark place that no one knows how to fix. No one knows the depth of what it's doing to the insides of you. And then there's all these other things that come into play. And a lot of the times we see people masking it with drugs and alcohol. And the depression and anxiety comes, and as we've seen, people are taking their lives. And I think for me, I'd always been an active kid since I've grown up. Like, you know, grew up riding motorbikes, surfing, every sport I could do. And I just got to this period where I don't want to be fucking like this for the rest of my life. I want to be that person I was once before. And I was like at that point where it's like, all right, it's either, I look back now, you're either going that way or it's going that way.
Right.
And I think for me, it was just like this massive realization that no, I'm going the other way. But a lot of the times it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
One more thing I just want to touch on is yesterday we're driving into Melbourne, and there was this big ABC segment on concussion. And there was a lot of commentary around rule changes and taking bumps out of the game. And for me, I sit there and I really worry about the game at the moment. And I don't have any hate towards football. I love it. It's the thing that gave me everything I've got to this day. Yeah, it took things from me, but I don't hate it. And I'm really interested to get your perspective on what's happening in the game at the moment with this issue.
I love the fact that you're not resentful to the game. I think it's really great to hear that. I've always really respected your take on that. I think the game is trying to respond.
Yep.
But it's responding mainly to what's happening on the field still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I can actually see that there's been a slight change in behaviour physically from the players. Now when I see two players running towards the ball from opposite directions, I can see adjustments that are being made that weren't being made 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Trying to either not be responsible for the other person's concussion and getting 6 weeks suspension, or hey, it won't be good for me if I get concussed here myself. So I think that's a positive change, and I think that's in response to all the talking and all the pressure and all the discussion around it. But I don't know how much is being done for the concussed player.
Yeah.
What happens? What are the protocols? How much change has really been made in that area? And I know that's the one area that you're most passionate about.
Yeah.
What happens now? Because we will never eradicate head knocks from.
No, that's the thing. I always I was listening to that ABC segment yesterday, and it in a way, it kind of really frustrates me because we've celebrated this sport for so long, and the big things that we've celebrated in our sport were the hits and all that sort of stuff. And I understand that it is doing a lot of harm to people, right? It did it to me. It took a lot of things away from me. But at the end of the day, I think we're playing a sport that is incredibly brutal, right? And there's 36 players on a field. How do you stop that?
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And I really worry about the sport in seeing even players overthinking at that level. Am I going to hit this person? That's the part that really worries me about AFL in general, and where does that lead us in the future for this game? I heard there was commentary yesterday about taking tackling out. It's like, all right, well, do we take punching out of the UFC? Do we take that sort of stuff out of the UFC? The thing that really worries me, and the only thing I think about, is that it's going to happen no matter what. No matter what we do, the AFL is not the only sport this is happening in. Most concussions happen outside of sport. What happens after the fact?
Yeah.
Are these people being treated right? Is their mental health being looked after? Because that's a huge thing. Are they using all their resources to find the best people in the world that can look after their brains? Do we have baselines performance of their brains before injuries and after?
Yeah.
That's what I'm worried about. It scares me a little bit with the direction of the sport and the rule changes, and that there's commentary around taking out tackling. And
You feel like it's too reactionary?
yeah, I grew up loving football. With you, I just feel that we are playing an elite sport. It doesn't matter how we try to change it, it's going to happen. There was another one the other night. There's nearly one every week. The biggest worry for me is the next part of the journey, where are these players getting the right treatment, and are they sitting out the right amount of time, which I think they are at the moment, but how do we get to a point where their brains are healthy enough to go back to playing sport? Because the biggest thing that we've learned over the last 5 years of this journey is that once you have one concussion, you're more susceptible to another.
Yep.
Your motor skills slow down, all that sort of stuff. So is that brain back at a level where it can play one of the fastest sports in the world? That's my biggest worry.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Thanks for that, brother. It's been good.
It's been awesome, man.
And you can now go back to
Always love chatting with you.
brother.
Love chatting.
Thanks, mate.